Great. Well, thanks, Marianne.
See the faces of names that I know.
I don't know if Suzanne, have you told everybody to type in on the chat where they're coming from and where they're joining us from?
No, we haven't done that yet. Well, we're going to wait another minute or two to see if more people will join us. But yes, please let us know where you are.
I know we got a lot of friends today. I'm very happy to see that.
Really, Sean? I actually haven't seen any cicadas yet in town. I'll have to look somewhere that's not on the trail.
Well, supposedly you could hear them.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be very loud. That's what they're telling us in the East anyway.
Okay.
We got Paris, Italy, Canada,
Philippines.
That's awesome. West Coast and East Coast covered too. LA, Virginia.
Gulf Coast.
Yeah, hi Bonnie. We're talking about where we all are physically. Just type it into the chat if you like.
Indonesia. Oh, hey Vanessa, nice to see you.
Yay, Amsterdam.
Bryn Mawr, PA. Somebody's close to me.
Let's see. Is Abu Dhabi the farthest from Chicago so far? Maybe. We've got we had Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Oh, Philippines.
Yeah,
Yes.
Indonesia, yeah.
Amazing. Salt Lake. Okay. All right. Well, we've got 50 people signed. No, 51. Okay. So I think we can probably get started. Let me see.
Oh, I recognize you.
All right. So welcome back to another Movable Book Society show and tell. We're looking at some wonderful differences in scale today because why not? We wanted to get a lot of makers showing off recent work, and I hope it'll be fun for everybody. So let's get right to it. Before we start with Colette Fu, we have some exciting news about our upcoming conference in 2025. So I'm going to let Isabel Uria give us an update, since she and I are working on sharing this conference. So she did so well with the last one.
So yes, I am sharing the conference again, sharing always the kind of the leadership and the organization with a lot of people from, especially Charlotte and Bill, who have been wonderful helping us out, and Larry, as always, will probably help us out a lot with this one as well. So our new conference for 2025 is going to be in St. Louis, Missouri. So St. Louis, the Midwest, St. Louis, Missouri, Arch, I don't know if anybody's familiar. I've never been, so I'm very excited. And Suzanne, if I can't, the hotel, the specific name of the hotel, I don't have it in front of me, so I just wanted to check with you.
Oh,
ready to announce that as well.
I think it's the Drury
at the Arch
Hotel, St. Louis at the Arch.
Yeah. It's the Drury.
Yeah, so it's right near the Arch. We're not going to miss it.
Yeah, so we're gonna be front and center, walking distance from the Arch, so that's gonna be really cool. And And we don't have a code yet. We will be placing that on our MBS website, the conference page, as soon as we can. But we don't have it yet, so just so everybody knows, keep you guys waiting a little bit longer. But once we update that, you'll be able to have a code, and when you call to make reservations or whatever, you can use that code and that number for our society. So we'll have a block of rooms.
Yeah, and it's and so it's the Thursday through the Sunday, September 25th and 28th, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
2025. So so coming right
So
up.
everybody that's from foreign lands or farther away, or is coming from the East Coast or West Coast of the US or anywhere in the world, you have a whole year to plan, a little more than a year. So start saving your pennies, and hopefully we'll be able to see you. And if we cannot see you physically there, we also would love to see you on camera, because we will be continuing the hybrid conference. So I'm very excited about that, and hope that a lot of people can join us. And if you can't make it internationally, I know it's a little harder, but if you can, I encourage you to come. It's a great group of people, collectors, book lovers, pop-up engineers, all kinds of cool people that love books and share that love, you know?
Right, and Isabel, didn't you have a question for the chat, or for direct contact about the presenters at the conference?
Yes, and needless to say, there's an open submission. If you want to submit, have an idea for a presentation, or would like to show your work, please contact me, and I will put the email in there. Oh boy, I should have that ready. I will put it in a couple minutes, but I will plop in the email so that you guys can email me to if you're thinking, hey, this would be a great idea, or I would like to present. Again, we accept all kinds of different things and thoughts. So
Different lengths of presentations.
Anything from paper engineers, historians, librarians, collectors. If you have a topic in mind that you'd like to present, please don't hesitate to contact us. And if you just have an idea and you're thinking, hey, Isabel, what about XYZ? Let me know. Shoot me an email. We can have a conversation via email, and we can talk back and forth about what the possibilities. I can't promise I will be able to accommodate everybody if I have a really high number of submissions, but on the last conference, I was able to pretty much accommodate, like, I think 99.5% of people. So you've got good luck if you contact me, and we can talk about it, and we can allot time for your presentation or whatever you wanna talk about in the conference. So let me know. Open call for presenters.
All right, and so we'll all look forward to St. Louis 2025. All right. So speaking of other big news, let's get to our books. Colette, would you like to share your screen and Marianne can spotlight you?
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining us, and tell us about some of your enormous work lately. We've been looking forward to it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Philadelphia, just a little south of Isabel. It's a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to make the last few conferences, so it's great to be with you today. So if you're not familiar with my work, here's a shoot that I did with a production company in New York City called Smarty Pants. Usually my pop-up books have to do with Chinese culture. I've done like a big series on the ethnic minority groups of China. And most of my work is, I use photographs. My background is in photography. So I like to make books generally in the 17 by 25 inch size. I think that started because my printer was 17 inches. wide. And before that, my printer was 13 inches wide. So my previous series was 13 inches. But here's a book called Taohua Yanji that was part of that series, and it's based on a ancient Chinese poem about a fisherman who travels through a cave into a village and finds people living harmoniously with nature, each other, and with animals. And when you say Taohua Yanji, it's also the same word for utopia in Chinese language. So when I was at the Philadelphia Photo Art Center in 2017, I had the opportunity to create a pop-up book installation in their gallery. Currently now it's called the Tilt Institute of Imaging. My proposal was to create as big of a pop-up book that we could fit in the room. So the book ended up being 13.8 by 21 feet. Here's the image of the book cover closed. Somehow it's really mind-blowing that it looked really flat. Here's how I did it. I printed, the Philadelphia Photo Art Center has large format printers there. So I was able to print all my images there and then adhere them to cardboard. I double-sided them. This was my first large scale pop-up book, so I was just hoping that everything would just work out. I would say that the ink was probably the most expensive material that I used, because we ended up using the ultrachrome ink, Epson ultrachrome ink, which is very expensive. You can imagine if you just print like an 8x10 print, that would cost $10. So after adhering the images to cardboard, then I cut them out, and here I am on top of the background, just kind of making sure everything fits together.
Hi, Mark. Hi, how are you today?
And then here I am with my assistant opening it. And you see that little flap on the top? We were going for the Guinness Book of World Records record. And in order to do that, I wanted to make it 21 feet wide, but there was an air duct in the center of the gallery. So that little flap, which is about a foot long, folds down, and then you can open it past the duct, and then that accommodated for the 11-foot ceiling. The book currently is at the Taubman Museum in Roanoke, Virginia. Oh, and I should mention that I did not get the Guinness Book of World Records because Guinness mainly said that a book should have more than one spread.
You integrated your calendar. Here in the Zoom desktop application, you'll only see meetings that you have personally scheduled. Similarly, from your Zoom mobile app's meetings menu, tap the name of the...
That's not you, right? Can everyone?
No,
make
it's
sure
not.
They're muted?
So last November, I was invited to go to the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art. Cynthia Sears has a book arts collection, and she's a founder of the museum. And so my proposal was to create a large pop-up book in this gallery space, which you can see is kind of limited in size. So because of that, I had decided to create a carousel book. That way, the cover would not be as big. It could be, 1/3 of the size if it was 10 feet tall, the cover could just be 1/3 the width as it opened up to 8 sections. They did put a time lapse up. This is called Wishing Tree. It's based on the wishing trees of, I should say, it's inspired by the wishing trees in Hong Kong that people were invited to write wishes on joss paper and then tie them to oranges, and they would throw the oranges onto the tree. Unfortunately, the tree started to die because of the weight of those oranges, and then they started to use plastic oranges. The time lapse you'll see is like a lot of it is missing, because what I didn't think about for this installation was, okay, I need this gallery space for the book, but I forgot about the space that I need to actually build it. So we went to the gallery, I mean to the classroom upstairs to build it, and then we would have to move the parts up and down the stairs as they were ready. And then I'll discuss a little bit more how I did it with this current project. Boy. So this is a project that just went up early May. The exhibition is called Slow Motion. It is curated by Monument Lab, and it's at Grounds for Sculpture. It is 5 of us artists were invited to create, new monuments, monuments that are made of non-traditional materials. And the idea is, how can we remake our relationships to monuments? All of us use unconventional materials. The exhibit will be out for 16 months, and it's at Grounds for Sculpture in Hamilton, New Jersey. It's an easy trip up from New York City. So when I was asked what I wanted to make, the key word that Grounds for Sculpture mentioned was whimsical. So I thought, okay, how about I just create a really large pop-up book of noodles, and spaghetti and noodles to be specific. And as I was looking online for inspiration, I came upon this album cover for spaghetti, On Top of Spaghetti, which was a song, that I grew up with. And but over time, while I just originally had thought I just wanted to do spaghetti and meatballs, somehow all of this research that I've been doing lately about the history of Chinese and Asians in general immigrating to the US, particularly around the 19th century, when we had a lot of exclusionary laws. And so, not to get into that history too much, but this is a combination of the sketch, and then on the bottom, those soy sauce beanbag packets, those are actually photographs of the beanbags. I printed the images at NextFab, which is a makerspace in Philadelphia. So for this one, since the show is going to be up for 16 months, I decided to use canvas, and I like the connotations that canvas have with labor also. And canvas, as a fabric, works really good for as a hinge. And this is my dog Nori. She helped me adhere the print to Gatorboard. I like Gatorboard because it's light and it's very stiff. It's very expensive though, but if you have the budget. And then the images were printed for the cover, and the background were printed onto canvas also. So the whole book was 7 by 10 feet open. And I know that's smaller than the previous book, but those limitations were, the size was limited because, I don't know, you all probably know the work of Bradley Litwin. You know, he's a kinetic sculptor / artist. So he created the table that this book was presented on. Here's a view of the book in its finished form from above. It's interesting to see the different angles. Like at some point when it was raised off the floor, you could not even see the cover because the table was about 3 feet high off the ground. Now there's other images in there. The railroad, I mean the roller coaster imagery is in there, and it also is to reference the Transcontinental Railroad, but that's in response to that never-ending question, where are you from? And where am I from? I'm from New Jersey. But somebody might say, where are you from? And I say, Philadelphia. And then, no, where are you really from? It's like, oh, where did you grow up? New Jersey. Oh, no, where were you born? New Jersey. No, where are your parents from? And surprisingly, this happens often, and that's China. So this pop-up has a lot of references to Made in New Jersey. And the fire and the red is to reference blood, and the burnings of Chinatowns and massacres that occurred during the 19th century. The table is also a reference to this salmon processing machine called the Iron Chink that was created in the 19th century to replace Chinese labor. So I wanted that table as supporting the book to reference not only the salmon processing machine, but an altar, a reference to the kitchen table where families spend time and eat together, and also a reference to a pasta machine. So this is how the final exhibition looks right now. And as I said, it's up till September 1st, 2025. Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colette. It's really a kind of an amazing sculpture. Grounds for sculpture is a really expansive area, so I'm sure there's a lot. I think it changes all the time, so everyone who's in the area should really go check it out. All right. Let's see. I think maybe we should move on to Bruce, and then we'll talk about big books together a little bit afterwards. If that's all right, we'll maybe answer questions at the very end. Bruce, are you ready?
I am ready.
Everyone knows Bruce, editor extraordinaire of our newsletter. Has a few tricks up his sleeve for engineering, which I guess we'll see.
Hi, everyone. I want to tell you about a project that came to me right after Halloween. I got a telephone call from a church in Cincinnati, and they said we're one of those mega churches, but we're non-denominational. We're kind of a free spirit kind of a church, and they wanted to do a pop-up segment for their Christmas program. And then they told me that they have actually 8 campuses scattered across Ohio and Kentucky. So they were going to broadcast the pop-up book to all of those, but the main church is a large space, and you'll see that later in this slideshow. But they wanted people to be able to see it when it's in the actual theater itself of the main church place. And so they asked me to try to make this book as big as I could possibly go. And they wanted 4 spreads. They wanted to see a winter traditional, non-denominational Christmas winter scene of animals and trees and snow and stuff. Then they wanted to have a nativity. They wanted to have the 3 wise men visit, and then they wanted to have a crown for Jesus as the King of Kings. At first, I thought everything was going to be white on white, except for the crown, which was going to be gold. Later, their illustrator became involved, and he illustrated the pieces as well. So let me try to start my program. If I can share the screen. Where do I do that at? I don't see a note to. Oh, there we go. Okay, I share my screen and walk you through this. Let's play the program. You guys see the large pop-ups?
We do.
Okay, so this is for Crossroads Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I first started, I talked to Colette because she was the only person I knew who was doing big things like this, and she suggested that I use a corrugated cardboard. And I went to some cardboard places and found that they have a double ply, which I needed because I wanted the hinges of the cardboard to actually work as well. I was very concerned about the thickness of this, especially since there was going to be 4 spreads. So at first, this is in my dining room. I'm just trying to work out the mechanics of how this would all work out. And I was going, okay, it's going to be 4 feet deep and then 4 feet tall. Well, I showed this to the church and they went, oh no, we've already told the minister it's going to be 8 feet tall. And so you have to do that. And so I went, okay, now, I go to schools and I talk to children a lot about pop-up books. And I say, when you're given a challenge and if there's any possibility that you may be able to pull it off, your answer should always be yes. And then you worry about how you're actually going to do it. And that's the kind of position I found myself in. Because not only did I have to figure out what materials it was going to be made on, I had to figure out where I was going to make it. And at first I was going to do it in my garage, which would have meant I would have had to empty my garage. And so it was just overwhelming. But frankly, what happened was a friend of mine came over. We were having dinner one night, and he came over. He and his wife came over, and we were telling him about this. And he said, "Oh, my company he's the CEO. We moved into a new space last year, but our lease wasn't up on the one we had. So I got a big empty office, and you can use it for your production of this thing." And I was going, "Oh my God, this is like the best thing that ever happened." So I got there, and you'll see later, not only was this space available, it was multi-rooms, but every room had these really great tables that were just perfect for building these things on. So I couldn't have asked for a better solution and a generosity of that friend. But after I started playing with the cardboard, I really started realizing that it was going to be too thick and a little expensive to get all this cardboard. The cardboard places were being resistant on providing, and the size of it was going to be an issue as well, and the weight of it was also of concern. So my very first concept was I started working with the winter scene. So my very first concept still was a square shape of 4 feet deep only, and this was just a basic idea. I wanted a church and some trees and some other things like that happening. Well, later they actually told me they didn't want a church, but they weren't unhappy with the idea. This is the first take on my crown. I'll show you that real quick. So the crown was something I wanted to be kind of geometric and stuff. Okay, so now this is the first attempt at the nativity. I had done years ago, I'd done a nativity for a pop-up book and it had a roof on there. So that's my first thought, was to do something like that. And also the Star of David, up there above. And they said that they told me they didn't want the Star of David to be part of this because they're going to broadcast some special effects on the screen on the wall behind the pop-up when it opens on the stage. The 3 wise men, my first attempt at that, with some mountains and buildings in the distance and the 3 wise men. And second attempt on the winter scene. So this time I've got just buildings in the front, just houses, and there's animals in the back. And I was doing a trick to make the tree stand up. But then I realized that this was out of scale. The houses needed to be in the background and the animals needed to be in the foreground. So you'll see that change coming soon. The crown then evolved to more geometric. So this is basically the finished shape of the crown that I've developed for them, or something like that. The Three Wise Men, second attempt, also evolving a little bit. So you guys start to see my process. I start rough and then refine it for each pass that I go through. And again, at this point, I thought that it was all going to be white. And so it was very important for me to have the shapes to be very, very well defined. That changed after a while, but I said, second attempt nativity. I got rid of the roof and just really focused on the silhouettes. Because the idea I was going to have backlighting and shadows and things to make all these things stand out. Third attempt on the winter scene. So now I've got more Christmassy like trees. The animals are down in front, but it also gave me the challenge of how to pop up the animals in the front. And I used this double V approach down here. Then the illustrator came on board and he started illustrating everything for us. So color was now a factor, and pattern, lots of pattern, you'll see. Also, they wanted the house with the smoke to be as tall as possible. So I got rid of that little mechanism and just really stretched it up high. There's the winter. There's his nativity. And again, at this point, I'm working on small scale, maquettes. And then the Three Wise Men are over there. This is actually the machine that was, so let me step back and say, the cardboard would not work for me. It was going to be too thick and too heavy. So I did some research and I found that there's a material that's like corrugated cardboard, but it's made out of plastic, and it's called coroplast. Very lightweight, which was a good thing, and flexible, which also helped. Even though it was one ply, since it was coated with the plastic on both sides, I could score things by deciding which side I would put a little slit. If I needed a mountain fold, I would slit on the front edge. And if I needed a valley fold, I would slit on the back edge, and it would bend in the correct direction. This is actually the machine that is printing on the coroplast now. I went to a sign painting company. Now, the largest that they could do, single sheet, can only be 4 by 8. And that really became the size of the pop-up. So 8 by 8, the final open size. These are some of the pieces. Now you see the tables. What weren't those fabulous? Not only are these tables, there were 3 sets of these, 3 or 4 sets of these tables sitting around, but they have die cuts in there, so I could actually get close in to actually work on these things. Now to cut these out, originally I tried a jigsaw, but the jigsaw actually turned all of the edges into fur, plastic fur. And then I had to go back with an X-Acto blade and trim all that off. So I just went, what the heck? I might as well just cut it all out with the X-Acto blade. So in all, I ended up having to hand cut 120 sheets of coroplast in order to produce these, because not only did they want me to do this 4 spread pop-up for their main church, they wanted the other 7 churches to have their versions of it as well. So in less than 6 weeks, I had to figure this out and produce 8 books with all these pop-ups in them at this size. So it was quite overwhelming at first. This is the very first time I actually put some pieces together and tried to make them work. Oh, one other thing. I was very concerned about what the adhesive would be. I knew any kind of wet media adhesive wouldn't work on the coroplast, but it turns out that they have some double-sided tapes that they use in the manufacturing of these pieces when they're making them for signs and things. And it's a big wide strip that I have to put down. And so this is my very first attempt at just seeing if everything would hold together and not come pulling apart. I was by myself, so the phone was just set up on the table. And it worked. And so I was very happy with that. However, here's one of the final ones. Now, when you design something that's 8 inches tall and then you blow it up to 8 feet tall, there are consequences. much being which that say a discrepancy of one pica becomes over an inch by the time it gets up that high. So I found that there were lots of little things that I had to redesign on the fly, and I couldn't spend a lot of money reprinting too many pieces. So I had to sometimes use exactly what I had. In this case, one of the problems was that the antlers on that deer there kept locking with the smokestack that was at the top up there. That was a bit of a problem. So I had to also there was a problem of the weight of these things. Some because of the height and the size of these things, something that worked in paper no longer worked at this scale. So I had to devise certain mechanisms that would force these things to stay open in the correct positions. So on the fly, I'm sweating bullets trying to figure out to make sure this thing is going to work. And I figure out how to do things like with strings and occasionally having to use pieces of wood to support and strengthen some of those pieces there. So there's a piece, and also notice if you see down here on the side beneath this fox over here, there are pieces of missing ink. Well, guess what? The ink is very, very susceptible to being ripped off by the tape. So even by placing these taped pieces in there, if you accidentally touch someplace, it would destroy the artwork. So I had that extra pressure to make sure that didn't happen going forward. There's the finished piece for the winter scene. Now notice that the deer is an entirely different position. I had to re-engineer how that deer works. When I show you a movie of this later, I want you to pay attention to the way that deer has to twist itself out of the way of the smokestack up there in order to make sure that they all fold up correctly, because it continued to interact and get locked in with those swirlies of the smoke up there until I figured out exactly how to make that happen. For the crown, we printed it as on this gold ink using a gold foil. And there's the final crown base put on this big lapis lazuli type image that they came up with for me there. But they wanted something else. I also had to take all these pieces back to my house because they wanted the crown itself to be glittery. So I had to find a transparent but glittery spray paint in order to spray all these things. And I couldn't do it inside this man's office, even though he's giving up the lease soon. I couldn't have paint going everywhere. So I took them back to my house, and in my backyard, here I am individually spray painting and drawing all the pieces for all the crowns that have to be for all the versions that I'm making. And there's a few more there. So it's quite a sight. I love it when I'm doing multiples and I can see everything built up like this. It's kind of fun. Okay. This is one room, and you can see that there are 4 completed books in this room. There's another room with another 4. I found out that I had to have help. I was able to do everything by hand up until the point of assembling the book, but I needed help, so I had a couple of friends that were available to come over, and it's because it takes 2 people to lift each one of these large pieces and line it up with the next spread that you have to all put together. And what I thought would take an hour ended up taking 8 hours, and then it turned into a couple of days. So my friends were very, very generous in giving the time to help me out with this. Then we had to put a foil cover on there that the church provided, sent down to me. Oh, how did I get those to Cincinnati? Well, I couldn't mail them all. There was too many of them, and it was going to be very expensive to mail all that. Plus, which I didn't trust anybody else with them. So I rented a truck and drove them all myself, all the way up there. So that was a 17-hour drive from where I'm at. And here I'm approaching Cincinnati. And there's my first look at the church that we're going to be taking this to. The lobby of the church, they have quite an arrangement there. This is the lobby. The lobby has its own Starbucks type coffee bar. Pretty nice for everybody, I guess. This is the entrance to the auditorium that we're going to be unveiling the pop-up to. This is the stage. And you can see why they said we needed to be 8 feet tall. This place was huge. And you see my book is sitting over there on the table. So now I'm going to actually show you guys the finished pop-up. Some of you have seen this on my Instagram feeds, but let's take a look at it.
Whoa!
That's the youth minister. And he was the best person to have on tape.
Wow!
Seeing this.
Jeez. You
See how the deer twists out of the way and gets out of the way of the smoke?
Oh! And who's the first guest? Whoa! Let's go! Whoa! That's the best.
Hey, get your
story.
phone out of
Oh,
here.
get
I'm
your
going.
phone
I'm
out.
going.
Hey, hey.
Of course, we're celebrating our King of Kings.
Whoa, baby! Look at that! Woo!
Okay, so everybody was happy. And so it worked out great. Everybody was vindicated for having this whole idea and put together, and everybody was very, very happy with the final thing. Now, following this, I was recently contacted by a member of the MBS named Seth Berg, and he said that there was an art event happening in Telluride, Colorado this year, and he wanted to do a piece for that. But there was an opening for another artist. So he and I decided to team up. And we are going to share a gallery space at this event. It's going to be, I'll be there for a full week building the piece that I'm working on. But the event itself is over a 3-day period. However, our piece, our gallery, everyone else has to take theirs down on the Sunday evening. Seth and mine will be up for a full month because it just happened that space was going to be open. So this art event is about interactivity. And Seth had this idea that he wanted to do something based on in India, there's some kind of step wells or something where all these stairways go down into a hole and the water flows in and stuff. He wanted to do something along those lines. I'm not going to show you pictures of his, that's his part of it. But we decided to share the space. So we decided we would do light and dark. So he is going to have an all white pop-up that opens from the top and lays down. And it's all these stair steps are all over the place with these arched windows that are slightly peaked. So they reference back to India. Also, he's going to put colored lights inside there so that they reflect some lights back in there that are kind of rainbowy. We talked about there's an artist named James Turrell who does art using light itself. There's a couple of places here in Houston that I actually went and recorded some things for just to get to see that myself. And they're just beautiful. So the idea is that people will enter through Seth's piece, crawl through out the side, and then go through a dark curtain into a completely blackened room where some of the people are going to open my piece, which is going to be 8 feet tall by 14 feet wide when it's open. That takes up the entire wall. That's the entire vertical and width space that I have to work with. And since it's going to be in the dark, I wanted to do something along the lines of the night sky. So I created a piece that's based on the celestial heavens, and it's called Eyes on the Heavens. And as you can see here, it's going to have the solar system is the central piece. There it is right there. The sun at the center, you see all the 9 planets around. And I notice that there's these 4 white discs over here. This has to be an interactive piece as well. So those are going to be 4 2-foot tall circular pops that people themselves can open based on 4 constellations. When you open it up, you're going to see the actual constellation take form. First, let me just give you an idea of the kind of shapes that are happening here. I'm making a multi-layered celestial map here, and that's where that's going to work. And then when you open each of the others, the constellation the animal that or figure that the constellation is embodying takes form as the pop-up, with the constellation still on their pieces, so that you can actually see how the figures and the constellations work together. I'm considering putting in LED lights where the stars would be, but I'm still working on that system. Also, since it's going to be in the dark, I'm going to I've got to go back in there and hand paint all the white lines with UV paint, and then have UV lights on this thing so it's glowing in the dark when you're in there in the darkened space. This is Orion. When you open it up, you see how the constellation is on the piece like this, so you can see how it's working, how it relates to the figure. This one is
Draco, Year of the Dragon.
Year of the Dragon. This is Sunday is the Year of the Dragon. I'm using Draco here. And then the third one, I haven't done the fourth one yet. The third one is going to be Cygna, which is a tale of a broken heart of two lovers. One died. The other is always signified as a falling swan.
Fallen swan.
Fallen from the sky in grief. And that is my presentation for you guys. So I'm gonna stop share. We can talk.
Well, thanks so much, Bruce. That extra new piece was a real bonus for sharing. Thank you for sharing the little peek ahead of that. So it looks like we're probably going to run over the hour this time, which is wonderful. We have plenty of content. So I think we're going to continue to hold the discussion that's out of the chat. It's great. There have been plenty of questions in the chat until after everyone has gotten a chance to present. So Geraldine, I think you're up next. Let's see your video.
Yes, I made a video because I wanted to be sure everybody understand well my accent, so there's subtitles. So, and you'll see I dress the same way, so it's more realistic. Yeah. My name is Geraldine. I'm an independent multidisciplinary artist from Montreal, Canada, in Quebec province. It's pretty recently that I started to make movable book, and it's a revelation for me. I really enjoy it. Today I'd like to share an experience of downscaling I had with my first pop-up album, L'Axe du Mal. First, I'd like to precise that I'm not a specialist in downscaling, but still I'd like to share with you what I've learned in this experience, and I hope it can be useful or interesting. So, L'Axe du Mal is my first pop-up album. It's a conceptual album of music and pop-up about 3 bars in Montreal. It was in nomination for Megan Dorfer Award in Artist Book category last year, which makes me really proud and happy. And so if you want to have more details about this, you can go on my YouTube channel, and you can listen the music on my Bandcamp. You'll have all the links. Yeah, so this is the first edition. I made 100 of those. They were sold out, so I was thinking that it will be fun to make a second edition. And I got a plotter machine, so I just experiment. Let's see what's gonna happen if I downscale it half size, and it went pretty well. So I made another hundreds of those. For the presentation, I tried to go even more farther and make a version quarter size. So first, if we'll talk about the effect that downscaling can produce. So if we take the cover, for example, there's a stereogram on it. So you can see the title in 3D. So for the original version, you can see it, and when you go half size, you can still see it, but it's really, really difficult. And for the smallest one, you cannot see it at all. And also, you have to consider the background, which where there's the lyrics of the song. So it's okay for the first two version, but for the tiniest, you can see nothing. First thing you have to consider when you're downscaling about the visual, you have to be careful about the resolution of your picture, but also the level of details you will put, because you will lost in legibility. First, when you arrive in the Quai des Brumes, the way the pop-up unfold is pretty nice, and it's pretty sturdy. And I think one of the elements that make this effects is the stiffness of the thickness and the stiffness of the cardstock. And for this bar, I had a sensibility for the architecture to represent as a famous triangle bar. So I think the effect is pretty good for this. And also because it's a size that we are more used to see, it makes you feel like you can be a part of the scene. When you go on the second edition, the feeling is a bit different. You can almost feel like you are floating over the scene. And if you go to smaller, because of the size of the finger, it's so small. I don't know, for me I feel more like I'm a giant, and it's also feel a bit more fragile. After, when we arrive in the Esco bathroom, you know, the details are sharp, you can see everything, and yeah. But when you arrive in the smallest version, I don't know, it feel more because it's small. I don't know, it feel more like intimate, like you see, like you're seeing a secret, or it makes feel it really different compared to the smaller one, where I don't know, I think it's really too small at this point. So I know it's like it's too cute, too hot. And the original is more dramatic, I will say, but with this version it doesn't feel dramatic at all to me. But when we arrive in La Roquette, it's the page that I like the less from the first edition, because I wanted to represent dancing meat, and it was my first pop-up, so I wasn't not really comfortable. I didn't know how to represent movement, and yeah, so it's pretty stiff. When we arrive to the smallest version, I don't know if it feels more alive to me. It's more wobbly, and you know, it because of the thickness of the cardstock, it moves a bit more. So I think this version is better. And when we arrive at the smallest, I don't know what to think, but it's fun. In general, if you use more regular conventional format, I think the effect will tend to bring the reader to feel more as a part of the scene. But if you go smaller, it will make different effects, like make them feel bigger, or feel the disembodied. So all those things are nice to explore. Now we'll talk about some elements you have to consider about the assembling, the choice of material and everything. So first, it's not because you go smaller that you will go faster. For example, but it can, like for the first edition, it was about, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours to cut, fold, score everything. But it was long because the cardstock was thick, and we had to score it with the scoring board. I will not use this cardstock anymore for this use, but for this one it's a bit more than an hour. But it's because also I add a plotter which can cut and score, so it's more easier. But so it was quicker for the smaller, for the half size, but for the quarter size it's about the same time for those two ones. So yeah, so it's really, it's so much details, and I'm not used to work with tiny things. And also when you go smaller, the precision is really important, because if there's a little bit of glue, it can just destroy everything. So yeah, so it doesn't mean you'll go quicker. Another thing to consider about the design, there's certain element you just reduce in half and it will works, but there's a lot of other things you will have to adjust, like the thickness of the paper will affect a lot of things. And smaller you go, thinner you go with the paper, obviously. But there's certain experiment to make, like for the smallest one, I used the same cardstock as this one, and as you can see, it was really too thick and it was really hard to manipulate, and it changed everything. So it went really better with this one. And yeah, so it will also change the thickness of the book, so the binding. There is also a limit of the smaller you can go, depending of the tool you use to cut. If you use die cut, probably you cannot go as small as with a plotter. And also there's some limit, like you can see there's a little hole between the legs of the character. The plotter didn't enjoy it really, and it's not even important for what it means, so I could just remove those also. You can change the design as well. There's also a lot of little elements that you will have to adjust, like the gluing tabs, the if you have slots, if you have the bleed has to stay kind of big. If you have mechanism like pivot or tab, so this kind of little things that you will have to change. In general, there's many reasons that you would like to scale. For this book, it was really the fun to try something else, to do another edition of my book. It can also be useful to produce different effects. Also to if you want to change material when you're an independent artist sometimes and you produce your stuff, you can feel like working with different format of paper. It can also be useful if you have to change some elements of your book and you can decide you put this this element in a little booklet on the side of the page. So yeah, that's the kind of a reason you could decide to use downscaling. And also it's often cheaper, not for the labor, but for the it often use less material, so less paper, less glue, and also it's easier for storage and transport. So yeah, that's some of the things I've learned with this experience, and I hope it will be useful for you. And here are the links to find my stuff.
Wow, that's wonderful. I just what amazing to see it in so many different sizes, and especially with such a recent uh recent activity on going through the process. But thank you. It looks like there's some good questions in the chat, but let's move on to Nicolas Caudron, I think, who's going to be showing us some things live. Yeah, take it away.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I have a couple of things to show you, and I'll try to show it live to you now with a white background. I was really into small stuff. In general, I really like small stuff. And this one, at some point, I was into miniature things. And miniature book, as you may know, have their own collectors. And the books have to be, what was it, 3 inches max in any direction. So this is basically what he did. This is a series of oh, if you've read the latest issue of Movable Stationery, you had the push outs that Bruce push out article, and this is actually one of those examples. Yeah, I don't know if the focus is okay. This is a series of stairs. The little dots and stuff is supposed to be people, actually, and it's just I crafted several books of stairs, and this particular one is called Small Night Steps. It's really little stairs. It's all hand cut with, if I can show it to you, the cutter knife I always use. So I always use this that I can find anywhere, I can buy anywhere. It just has 5 spreads. I don't know if there's a pop-up inside here. It's blue and blue, so it's really tiny to cut. And it's a selection of the spreads that already are in the previous installments. The point of all this stairs, the steps series they're artist books, all handmade hand cuts, and they can be read like a regular book, and they're also a accordion book, like a Leporello, like this. And in this particular series, there's actually, if you look carefully, and this continues well, Bruce's last project, there are constellations and stars in the blue parts. I don't know if they're very visible, but there you go. In the background here, you can see them. Here too. It may not be exactly visible live, but there are some video links that maybe Isabel can up there. This was one thing. I actually used always this. I love this paper. It's actually not really paper. It's called Bristol paper, which is really aggregated bits of paper, because there's no fiber in it. So there's no, because it's a big problem when you do pop-ups with paper. You have to care about what's the direction of the paper fibers, and there's no need to care about that here, because if you have, so it's really convenient, really. This is one thing, and at the same time, I designed. Oh, this was my COVID work. I caught COVID in the early 2021, and during 1 week I was locked in my room, and I live in a small space. That's also why I design small books, and I did this just a miniature version. Oh, everything's going down. Of Tenniel's illustrations for, Alice in Wonderland, and I designed a little, I don't know if you can see it here, or here, a little black white rabbit, and there's a little mechanism here that I glued here. This one is laser cut, and you can, it holds there anyway. And there's that. And why am I showing this to you? Because with the deluxe copies actually had laser cuts and hand assembled a little pop-up. There's 21 copies of this. On the cover, it's really you can see, how can I see it? It's out here. You have the whole story. You have the Alice's sister, the rabbit hole, and then anyway, it goes here too, where you have the trial and the cricket and everything, and it's a little bit larger than the book. The book is a real miniature, 3 inches max. It's a little bit larger, but it goes like this, and there. It's I really like non-conventional pop-ups, and this one, as you can see, it opens. It's more than 180 degrees, and it's just, I think, 210 grams per square meter paper, and I pasted. I really like things with strings too. It's actually what holds the thing together. You see. Anyway. This was another example. And lastly, it's shorter than most. You may have seen I think that was my second generally published pop-up book. It was think about George Orwell, a graphic novel. It's by a wonderful artist named Xavier Coste, and I was called on that project to make the last, there we go, the last spread of the book, which is actually the last page of the book, and it goes like this. It's a cityscape, And actually, while designing the project, I found very useful to use really small, just like Geraldine said, that really small versions for other people to have an inkling of what it would look like seen from afar. It actually brings some distance between you and the work, and it's a nice thing to do to make people understand how it's going to work. And that's about it. I don't find downscaling, talking about the hand cut, hand assembled stuff, I don't find downscaling exceedingly challenging. The cutting is just, any people doing some kirigami will tell you that it's really just time. You have to take your time and cut stuff. It's something very, well, it's an additional dimension to the work. Personally, I like it, unless I have to craft 50 copies of something and you get tendinitis and it's not that good. But that's about it. Yeah. And if you have any questions afterwards, welcome to reply. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also thank you for drawing on on Geraldine's discussion as well. We'll have a lot to talk about afterwards. Okay, last presentation. Jean, you're up.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's great to be a participant in one of these. I've been attending them for quite a while. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. What I'm going to do is show you the largest small books that we've seen. Let's get this up here. I'm going to start with a video. And this is a project that I did. I've only been a cartoonist and a book artist for a handful of years. I studied comics for the longest time, but I took a bookmaking class, a book binding class as part of a library studies degree that I did a few years ago. And for my final project, I did a modified carousel book based on cartoonist Steve Ditko. And after that class was done, I had this idea that I couldn't get out of my head until it escaped through my fingers, which was a book based on the very first Peanuts comic strip. So I created this and I put the video online. This is the very first Peanuts comic strip from October 2nd, 1950. There's no sound in the video. So it's a modified carousel strip, modified carousel book with just a couple of pop-ups. Very, very cruel first introduction to Charlie Brown. And again, since it's a modified carousel book, you can stretch it out like that. I put this video online, and for me, it wound up going semi-viral. On YouTube, it's only got a couple hundred views, but on other places, it got thousands of views. And to make a long story short, eventually I got contacted by 2 different publishers. And one of them said, I've already talked to Peanuts Worldwide, and they would like to publish this as an actual trade book. What do you say? And of course I said yes. So let's switch over to the camera here. And this is the thing that just does not happen. So this was the book that I made, and again, it was selling and everything like that. The actual book that got published was a little larger. And what I learned is that trade publishing is very different than making your own book. Trade publishing becomes a team sport, 100%. But you can gain a lot of things by having your work worked on by other people as well. At first, I thought this was going to be my book. Turns out it's our book, because number one, the book designer, designer named Sean Dahl. She came up with this idea where the front cover actually flips open like this. And then Chip Kidd, who's a book designer and a Peanuts fan, donated a couple of photographs of some ephemera from Peanuts. This here is something that was like used to sell the strip for to newspaper editors at first. And this here is that very first Peanuts comic strip. This is the first tear sheet. It's the first time it was actually printed anywhere, just to test to see how it would look. So the book actually has 3 hardcovers, which gives it a nice spine here, but it also gives it a second spine, which they decided to give a Charlie Brown stripe to, which was really nice. But then, so when you open it up, and then you get to the book itself, and they asked me to do coloring also, but they asked me to color it as if it were like a 1950s comic book, so with the dots and everything like that. And one thing that I realized early on, eventually, is that I had to do things like move the color above the line of the stuff, because the original one I did in black and white because I wanted to pay homage to Charles Schulz, the artist. So I wanted to do nothing that he hadn't already done. So I was just using his own lines and trying to show how his own lines were able to define space. One thing that happens in this panel, though, is that these 2 characters here. This is Patty, which is not Peppermint Patty, and this is Shermie. But in this panel, Shermie's head gets cut off. So I had to rebuild the top of Shermie's head. So because if you tilt the book, otherwise it would look like Shermie has had a lobotomy. So, and that had to get approved by Peanuts Worldwide. So I actually built the top of his head using lines that Charles Schulz had drawn in other panels, just to make sure that it was all Schulz's artwork still. I really wanted to make sure of that. So I made a few different decisions as we went through, just in terms of layering. Most of it's exactly the same. Good old Charlie Brown. Oh, I hate him. One thing that they didn't do that I asked, this last balloon doesn't lay as flat as it does in my original. They didn't actually quite follow my instructions for that. I learned how to make this pop-up design from the elements of pop-up, of course, but we didn't, in my bookbinding class, we didn't learn how to make pop-ups. So I went, because I work in a library, so I went and found the elements of pop-up, and that's how I just first learned how to make a pop-up. And they unfortunately put the supports too far apart, so this doesn't lay as flat as I wanted it to. And the other thing that I did in this was I took it in every panel, the sky gets a little bit darker to kind of reflect Shermie's increasingly angry point of view. So it's like in literary terms, it's called the objective correlative, the outward symbol of the outward manifestation of an inward state of being. I was a literature professor for a while too. I've had way too many different jobs and just kind of bounce around to different things. But and then I get to write a little essay in the back also about why I love Charles Schulz and why I love this strip. But that's about all there is to say about this. So I think I'll leave that there.
Thank you so much, Jean. I'm glad we could get you in here. And yeah, everyone who's on the call who might want to submit to present at a future show and tell, feel free to email me at info@movable book society, or Marianne, I think, or info was probably on the chat previously. But yeah, so let's open up for questions. I have to say this was an amazing group of objects, such variety. I'm personally working on an exhibition about printing on fabric at the Newberry for 2026, which I didn't think would be able to involve pop-up books, but apparently it could, based on Colette's canvas printing there. So that really resonated with me in a way I wasn't expecting. And then the coroplast being another one. What is the most, I don't know. So let's just start off with materials. Did any of our small book presenters end up using unusual materials that they weren't expecting as they went through the process? Or nope.
No, same as always for me.
Yeah, it didn't. It worked.
Yeah,
pretty
the stairs hand cut stuff ranges from this size to basically this size, but it's always the same paper, same tools, and it's really when you go like Bruce and Colette into more gigantic stuff that density and tension and weight really messes things up.
Well, I guess that's just a testament to how all paper engineers have to use X-Acto knives and so forth, because I think I've heard there's some miniature book producers who actually have miniature tools. So if you can get the same results without downsizing, you're cutting elements and so forth. That's incredibly impressive. Geraldine, did you have that? Did you end up using the same tools?
It was a bit different, especially like the glue. It was not archive-friendly glue, but it had to be kind of more liquid, so I can do little tiny drops. And also I use c'est quoi les pinces? The tweezers and a scoring tool. So, but it wasn't that different. But still some little difference. And also it's fun because you can use thin paper. So with a regular pop-up, it will just be so yeah, that's what difference for.
Suzanne, I had written down a few questions from the chat, and I have them listed in case we want to ask the presenters some stuff.
Oh, do you want to grab some from there? Why don't you just...
So Sean wanted to know that if you, this is for Nicolas, if you can repeat the grain-free stock that you were using.
I replied in the chat. It's at least in France, it's called Bristol paper, like the city in the UK, and it's what 210 grams per square meter, and it comes in at least in Euro size A4, A3, and A2. It must be available for industrial size A0, I think, but I've never used it, and that's all I know about it.
Thank you for the info. Then for Bruce, we have Chris Takas wanted to know, what is the cover material for the books and how wide is it? Oh, if you can unmute, Bruce.
Gotcha. Okay, so good question. Actually, between the pages of the coroplast, I had to put a foam core, which is a 3/16 inch foam core, in order to keep the flexibility of the turning of the pages from affecting the pop-ups. So there was that. The cover itself is made out of a 1/2 inch thick gator board, which was completely black. But then for the hinge itself, I had to find a material that I could glue onto that and wrap it around. So the entire book was probably, I'm going to say 8 to 10 inches wide at the binding, at the spine. But yeah. And it's by the way, it's very heavy by the time you got all that together. It took 3 of us in order to carry those down to the truck.
Great, thank you. And then for Colette, there were a few questions. what did you call the board that you used with a canvas? This is from Amy.
It was Gator board.
It's Gator board, okay. And then Jim Fraser wanted to know, do you mind telling us what paper you print on for your smaller works? And do you have trouble with the image cracking where the pictures fold?
I used various papers for the smaller pop-ups, but I always use a matte paper because, you know, a glossy paper will have another coating on top. And I try to avoid folds, like mountain folds. But sometimes I'll score to get, you know, you get a cleaner fold. And then sometimes I'll go in there in the folds and touch it up with like a watercolor marker.
And then one last question that Sean had for you was, can folks play with your noodle mountain mechanism during the exhibit?
So unfortunately, since the book has to be up for 16 months, we're limiting it to staff opening it.
I have one more question. I don't know who this is. I'm assuming this is for Bruce maybe, but someone was talking about the glue Loctite if it's super glue. I don't know, Mary, if you're in the call, if you can specify who that was for. I don't know if she's
It
here.
looks like Geraldine answered it and send a link in the chat. But yeah, we have one more question for Bruce though. Ziad was asking, what is your process for creating the white on white silhouettes?
Oh, that was I just used the paper itself without any kind of drawing or printing on there. The way I do things is that I have, if you see behind me, this is actually a light table behind me. There's a piece of paper over it, but because of the light table, I can print my die lines on a sheet of paper and then put my own pop-up paper on top of that and see the die lines through it. And therefore, I don't have to print directly onto the paper itself. I just trace over the die lines themselves, and it gives me a much cleaner look for my maquettes. There.
Those are on my end. Those are all the questions that I saw in the chat. So we're good on here. I don't know if anybody, I have put all the links on there. If anybody has any links additional that were in place for yourself as a presenter, or for it, like if anybody had questions for our presenters additional, just put them in the chat or feel free to ask them.
Yeah, and since we had a few people who came at the end, I wanted to reiterate that that Isabel had announced that we're going to St. Louis for our next conference in 2025, and are interested in hearing from everyone about what sort of presenters you'd like. We don't have a headliner yet, for instance. So you could nominate other people. So just let us know. And thanks, Isabel. And so in the end of September. We'll put some more details on the website soon.
Yep, we will place that all on the website so you guys can know the specific hotel in St. Louis, Missouri in 2025 at the end of September. And I have placed the email link at the very beginning, but I'm gonna replace it now so that if anybody has any ideas, thoughts, questions, suggestions, or they want to present yourself at the conference, let me know. And the email is on the chat.
All right.
We'll be announcing that online as well on our MBS website.
Yeah. So if there are no further questions, again, yeah, Mary and I are just thrilled with the group of people who came out for this, as presenters, and such a wide range of attendees. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one in August. Date TBD. Any last questions? I see there's a couple more things in the chat. Oh, nope. No questions. Okay. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Nice seeing everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Happy holiday in the US.
I think